And this is going to be an open forum, so anyone who wants to, obviously we spoke about a lot of different points of information here. Feel free to raise your hand and ask some of our experts.
Okay, so what can I do as an individual to stop the nuclear weapons? I am embarrassed and horrified to have learned all this information that our country did and what we did to Japan. It's horrifying. And I don't like the idea that our government makes these decisions without talking to the people. So what can I do?
Listen to this completely before you pass judgment on me, okay? I believe that the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima was a very, very bad thing. However, I do believe that as we look back in history at decisions that were made by other people, we need to look at it in the context in which they were living and the elements that they were trying to piece together. And I think it was a bad decision because it opened a door. It let the genie out, as Imam says. But I do believe that they looked at it sincerely. I believe that they felt that that was the thing that would be best to do under the circumstances and that would actually save lives. But then it has unleashed something that I think is not what they anticipated. And they were wrestling with that at the time. So yes, I think they got it wrong, but I don't want to condemn them unduly because down the track people might look back at the things I'm doing right now and they might say, how could anybody be the idiot that he was? And so I do think we have to look with respect upon people even who made mistakes.
When are we going to start owning up for the mistakes that we've made as a country? Because back when we came over and the Indians and we just took their land from them, who were we as English people have the right to do that? But they did that. That was their time. And the slaves, again, that was their time. But at some point we have to own up to the mistakes that have been made and make sure they don't happen again, and that's what we're doing.
Yes, I agree.
I think we had another question.
I think as a nation, we have been on a journey to own up to our past mistakes. We are on the right trajectory. However, nuclear arms is not really it's not taking the place in our conscience that it is an evil that we have to confront. We are relegating this to that this is a necessary evil to protect us. The experts, they want to convince us that if we eliminate those weapons, we will have, great threats. Russia could really, they may choose to keep their weapons. Other nations may choose to keep their weapons, and they may use them on us. You know what? I'd rather live in a small country like Switzerland that doesn't have nuclear weapons, doesn't have a huge army, and has no enemies. They may have some enemies, but we have too many enemies because of all the things we do. And there is a different way, that we can minimize the animosity of other nations towards us if we take all the billions that we're spending on maintaining these weapons and developing them and start, doing things for peace, that we earn the respect of other nations. But I go back to your question, what you as an individual can do. All work starts with one individual. If you believe so strongly in this cause, you can mobilize other people. The social media is so powerful, it's free. You can connect with 7 billion people today. And at some point, if there's enough people, not just in this nation, but in India, in China, in Russia, in France, in England, in every nation that has nuclear weapons, their young people are like us here, like you, concerned about their future and their children's future. And let's talk people to people. Let's not keep it, in the dark rooms between the politicians, because we all want to live. And let's talk to these people who are supposed to be our adversaries and say, no, you are just like us, we're just like you. Let's learn about each other so we don't have to eliminate each other. And you'll be amazed how many millions of women and men and young people across the globe who today, are English is a universal language, and they'll understand what you're saying, and they will really change their view of our country. And at some point, we can make this a priority issue. We put it on a ballot that any candidate for Congress or for president has to answer this question. How can we get to a plan to eliminate weapons from everywhere? Agree that this is evil that must be eliminated. Just we eliminated slavery, just like we eliminated other evils, we need to work on this as a priority.
And if I can, no, I want to echo what the Imam said. This is not necessarily about nuclear weapons, although it is. And I'm confident that if this generation doesn't do it, this generation will watch their kids do it. But eliminating nuclear weapons is not truly the issue. The issue is, how do we deal with conflict? How do we deal with conflict in our own community, in our own state, in our own country? How does our country deal with conflict with other countries? If we were having a conversation about nuclear weapons in the early 1900s, let's say 1910, no one could have even fathomed that we would create a weapon like that. So let's say we are successful in eliminating nuclear weapons this generation. We haven't even fathomed what the next weapon was going to be.
True.
But the conflict is going to be the same. The same conflict that happens 100 years from now will be the same conflict that we're having today, and the same conflict that occurred 100 years ago. So this is really about how we deal with conflict.
And all religions, and Pastor Jim can speak to this, all religious traditions believe in the idea that you have to love for others what you love for yourself. Or don't do unto others what you don't want them to do unto you. This golden rule. And if religion didn't offer anything else, this is enough. We have to live by this rule to be true to our faith, each to their respective faith. If you're a Jew or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hindu, live to that principle and say, I love for you what I love for myself. I want to live, so I want you to live, and so on.
Earlier, I mentioned to you about Johan Gultung, the Norwegian sociologist. He says that wherever there is violence, there is an unresolved conflict. Unresolved conflict means there is an unresolved conflict means there's an incompatibility of goals, including means that has not been resolved. If you don't like violence, solve the conflict. And that's why I think it's so important to teach conflict resolution in schools. I think if we really want to prepare for the 21st century and continue to live in the 21st century, we need to teach in conflict resolutions to young kids in the schools, middle schools, high schools. It should be just like we teach math, we should be teaching conflict resolution. We live in a world that is more and more complex every day. All the more reason why we need to resolve those things. We need to resolve those issues at the ground level when they're born, before they get so complex that now we need to threaten each other with nuclear weapons. In other words, it's almost like nuclear weapons is like the last stages of a disease process, Nip it at the bud, if you will, but it comes from conflict. So I think calling out, doing courses on conflict resolution, working in the community to deal with conflict resolution, these are really important ways to really continue to be engaged in the work that is really ultimately about resolving conflict and eventually violence.
If it's okay, if I can just add to what everybody's shared, we have a saying like war and peace begin at home. You know, so I think that's part of the manifestation of the evil, or, you know, it's something that you shared in your presentation about, you know, people, it's basically everything is connected, right? So at the root, like if the root is rotten, then what's going to grow from it is also rotten. So if we can transform the root, you know, so if, you know, every person, like starting with ourselves, come from a place of respect. And, you know, I think because the ultimate thing, because we're talking about this very large and serious issue, but the root of it is in the human being, right? So if human, it's, you know, these are the products of human beings, you know, so all the things that we see in society that we don't like, or all of the manifestations of evil that exist in humanity, it comes from human beings. So if an individual human being themselves can transform in a moment of life, you know, what we would normally do. So even, again, like beginning from a conflict with the person in front of me, you know, or at home, or with my friend, or in a class, or, you know, with people of differing faiths or backgrounds, you know, if we're able to transcend our differences in a moment and able to reflect on ourselves, because I think a lot of it too, it's a manifestation of not feeling empowered. You know, so then this feeling of looking at the environment, or looking at, you know, everyone else around us, or looking out there, you know, in order to make a change, you have to have, you know, billions of dollars, or you have to have these credentials, or you have to be famous. And all of that is a delusion, you know, that it's like in our heads to make us feel powerless, you know, so then we don't take action. But, you know, it's from that same root of delusion of not, you know, really believing in the power of our own individual lives and what we do every single day. Like Nelson mentioned earlier, those million small acts that we do, that's the truth. You know, so I think it's our own battle as individuals to fight against that tendency, that, you know, belief that we kind of brainwash ourselves for the negative, like, oh, like, you know, my life doesn't matter, what I do doesn't matter, these are just small things. But actually, the truth is that's everything, you know. So if we can truly, you know, be able to respect and cherish the life of the person in front of us, you know, that's living out this ideal. You know, and it seems small and unglamorous, but that's the true root and the true, like, solution to be able to transform our collective tendency. So.
I think we have another question here. Maybe after I get my degree, I'll go to New York and get my talk show.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mushri did allude to what my remark and question was going to be. I've heard through the speakers that you are connected with the Interfaith. And I'm gathering that you're with many different religious organizations. Well, I've seen a picture only of Miss Jackson's youth, and I'm wondering if it is difficult for you to create something in your individual faith. It must be very, it must be real hard work. And so I'm wondering if there's anything concrete you can tell me that will help us to understand or give us encouragement or give us a push in how to work together to bring about such an awareness of these vital issues.
Great question.
I'm very pleased that we have a great group of leaders, faith leaders in Central Florida who regularly come together to address issues from homelessness to poverty to the challenges that are facing everyday Americans. Now, to be honest, nuclear issue is not on our agenda, but I'm very inspired by the work of the youth here, and what I want them to know that, the paradigm has shifted. In the past, not too long ago, just before some of these young people were born, you couldn't know what's happening inside the Kremlin, inside the Soviet Union. But today, there are ordinary Russians who connect with ordinary Americans and ordinary Indians and Chinese and South Africans. through social media, free social media. And you get to know things before someone filters that news at CNN or Fox or MSNBC. You get to know what you want to know. And so there is the potential for global mobilization of young people to say, we want a new, clear future where this issue is brought to the fore and emphasized that in every nation, the youth have to put pressure on their leaders to say, we want a future, and we can trust the other side. And if there are enough people, millions of people, there's over 1 billion people on Facebook today, okay? I think if 1 billion people said, we're gonna work together to stop this, it will stop. But it takes some young person here to take this initiative and run with it and start gathering steam, and before you know it, it's a global movement towards a universal goal, because this is the one thing that, you know, is against all humanity. It's not, there are no winners. But everybody feels after they leave tonight, I have my own issues, I have my own exams and my own problems. You know, somebody else is going to do it. Somebody has to start and bring the awareness, bring the knowledge. You know, there are some videos online that you could use to bring this awareness and say your future is hanging in the balance. Before you know it, politicians will pay attention to this conversation and start saying, okay, the young people have more wisdom than we do, and this issue should be addressed simultaneously. All nations should be eliminating. You know how much attention the media have put for the Iran versus the 5+1 nations negotiation for 2 years. And I don't know, why is it just we're worried about one Iranian bomb when we have
Thousands.
thousands of bombs, and we never talk about them. There are other nations have thousands of bombs, and we don't talk about them. You know, India does, China does, but yes, we don't want more, and maybe the Iranians are crazy. That's how we pretend. But all along, I think they were saying, on religious basis, we don't want to have it. You know, their religious leader said this is on religious basis, we are not going to have it. But I think we should have a discussion, since they brought this topic, to say, what about, you know, you're going after this kid who has not even a knife, and you have all the ammunition here. So we need to call the bluff of these other nations who have the bombs and say, you also have to reduce your bombs. That way, Iran or the next Iran will not feel threatened. Today, everybody is making the excuse that I need it. I need this weapon to protect myself. But you can't. It's not a protection.
One more question. My
If I may
question
say
was,
something, you know, the Non-Proliferation Treaty meets every 5 years to review this treaty. And there's going to be a very major meeting in New York for 4 weeks, starting in May, early May. But at the end of April, there's going to be major initiatives, people coming from all over the United States and the world to New York, to let those people that are going to be at that conference, that they really need to get serious about abolishing nuclear weapons. You guys did something incredible. All this material is amazing. By the way, next Sunday, there's going to be what is called a global wave. All over the world, there will be events having to do with abolishing nuclear weapons. I would like to propose to you, I would love to have some of you, I would like to make a banner, a big banner with your logo, and I would like as many people as we can get to do something in a, in a street corner in Orlando on Sunday. Some of you that don't go to church, that would be church, okay? And those that go to church, well, they can come back and wave the banner. But it's going to be the next Sunday, and it's going to be all over the world. And by the way, there's a Facebook page called Facebook Global Wave 2015. Go there if you can, and you can see all the different things that are being done. And I think all the stuff that you guys created, you need to put that on that Facebook page, because that will be looked at by millions and millions of people. And speaking of millions of people, Japan is sending 5 million petitions to the NPT conference. And then, of course, hundreds of thousands coming from other places. But Japan alone is sending 5 million, okay? So you guys did this early. You can be an impetus for other communities to do this, but like Imam Musri, I'm not very handy with social media, but he really, apparently he really knows it. But you guys should really use social media to disseminate what you guys have created here, because I think it's an impetus for other people, okay?
Thank you. I actually have time for one more question.
My question was to Imam Musri, but he already answered before I asked. So I'm going to ask a different question. So, like, you know, the country Pakistan and India, they both fight along, but after both of them got nuclear weapons, none of them had another war. So do you feel like after developing nuclear countries like those develop peace afterwards? So it's kind of helping the peace move on. Thank you.
No, I don't believe that. You know, Pakistan and India were one country, and they are one people. And I think it was a big mistake that they split, and they became enemies going into several wars after being the same country for centuries. And having the weapons now to guarantee their safety is not safe. It's like, you know, I was at the police academy, and they were simulating who can pull the trigger first, the shooter or the responder. It's a half a second, split second. And in most instances, both of them will be dead, you know. So depending on that, to protect yourself and to say, now we have peace between Pakistan and India because both of them have nuclear weapons, you know what? There are hundreds of millions of Indians and maybe 100 million Pakistanis who are poor, very poor. They can't afford to maintain these nuclear weapons. So they shouldn't be pursuing them. They should be focusing on how to feed their people. The politicians have been for decades saying the enemy is the other side and blaming all their problems on the other side instead of saying we are not doing our job to serve our people and get them out of poverty.
Sorry.
And that is what we have to also recognize, that, you know, nuclear weapons kind of used as a justification for armed race between two nations, great nations, but nevertheless, it's not going to necessarily keep that peace and that balance. At some point, you know, somebody can make a mistake and it's all over. It just takes one mistake. So I would love to see this experiment start there, de-escalation in Pakistan and India, to say, if I was the leader in either country, I would say, I will do it unilaterally. I'll eliminate those weapons because I want to demonstrate to you that I respect you, I love you, you're not my enemy. We were one people before, and I have no problem being one people again. And let the ball be in their court, you know. But playing Russian roulette is not going to help us here.
Great, thank you. If you would please give another big round of applause to our guest speakers for joining us this evening. Thank you.